Beneath a crown of iron and a heart of ice, a ruthless king ruled an empire built on fear. But from the shadows of his tyranny, a single, luminous hope emerged, a gifted maiden whose voice could heal the deepest wounds. When he dragged her into his gilded cage, he sought to possess her magic and break her spirit. He never imagined that her greatest power wasn't her supernatural gift, but her ability to see the wounded man behind the monstrous king. This is the tale of how a single flame of compassion dared to challenge an ocean of darkness, and how love can be the most epic adventure of all. The kingdom of Eldoria lived under a perpetual twilight of fear, its spirit crushed beneath the iron heel of its ruthless king, Kaelan. From his obsidian throne, he commanded not with the loyalty of his subjects, but with the sharpened edge of his guards' blades and the cold terror of his gaze. Whispers of his merciless judgments echoed through the cobbled streets of the capital. Tales of nobles vanished into the dungeons and villages taxed into starvation for the slightest dissent. Kaelan believed power was the only language the world understood, a lesson carved into his soul by a treacherous past that had stripped him of all softness, leaving only a hardened shell of vengeance and suspicion. Yet, in the darkest corners, a different kind of whisper began to circulate. It spoke of a gifted maiden, a young woman named Hannah, who resided in the mist-shrouded village of Willowvale. They said her voice could mend broken bones with a mere melody, that her touch could cause blighted crops to sprout anew, and her presence alone could soothe a fevered brow. To the oppressed people, she was a clandestine beacon, a flicker of magic and hope in the overwhelming darkness of the king's reign. Her gifts were a quiet rebellion, a testament that not all light in Eldoria had been extinguished. Hannah moved through the struggling village not as a queen, but as a humble healer, her hands calloused from work, her heart aching for her people. In a small hut fragrant with herbs, she hummed a low, resonant tune as she tended to a woodcutter's grievous axe wound. The man's pained grimace softened as the supernatural melody wove through the air, the flesh beneath her fingers knitting together seamlessly. "You are a blessing, Hannah," he breathed, his eyes wet with gratitude. She merely smiled, a sad, gentle curve of her lips. "Every heart deserves peace," she replied, her voice itself a balm. But such light could not hide forever from a king who ruled the shadows. Kaelan's spymaster, a gaunt man named Vorlag, knelt in the throne room, reporting on the strange rumors from the north. "They call her a sorceress, my liege. She undermines your authority with every life she saves," he hissed, painting her acts of mercy as insurrection. Intrigued, a cold, calculating spark ignited in the king's eyes. A weapon? A threat? Or merely a curiosity to be collected and controlled? His command was absolute. "Bring her to me. I would see this gifted maiden for myself." The king's riders descended upon Willowvale like birds of prey, their black armor a stark contrast to the village's muted greens and browns. The captain's voice was a whip-crack in the anxious silence, demanding the one they called the healer. Fear paralyzed the villagers, but Hannah stepped forward calmly, her head held high. There was no fear in her eyes, only a weary resolve. She had always known this day might come. The adventure she never sought had found her. The journey to the imposing medieval capital was a passage from one world to another. The vibrant life of the forest gave way to the grim, fortified stone of the city, where citizens averted their eyes from the guard. Upon arrival, she was not taken to a dungeon, but to a surprisingly elegant suite of rooms. Confusion warred with caution within her. Was this a gilded cage? The answer came when two stoic guards escorted her to the grand hall where the ruthless king himself awaited, his expression unreadable, his power a nearly physical force in the room. This was the beginning of their destiny. King Kaelan observed her with the detached interest of a scholar examining a rare insect. "Demonstrate," he commanded, his voice echoing in the vast hall. He expected a cowering peasant, an easily intimidated girl. He did not expect the quiet dignity that radiated from her, or the directness of her gaze. When she simply sang a single, clear note that caused a nearby withered decorative rose to bloom in an explosion of crimson petals, his cold composure flickered. This was no mere trick. Their initial interactions were a tense drama of power and subtle defiance. He questioned her, probing for weakness, for ambition, for treachery. She answered with a truth so disarming it felt like a new kind of strategy. She spoke of compassion not as a weakness, but as a different kind of strength. He ordered her to remain at court, a decision he told himself was purely strategic. He would study this anomaly, this living challenge to his entire philosophy of rule, and then he would decide her fate. The enemies to lovers trope began its slow, inexorable turn. Kaelin kept her close, inventing reasons for her presence. He tasked her with healing his most battle-hardened guards, testing the limits of her supernatural gift. Each time, she performed not with pride, but with a profound empathy that unsettled the men and himself. He once found her in the gardens, not using her magic, but simply tending to the neglected plants with her bare hands, her expression one of deep sorrow for their state. A pivotal moment arrived when a young kitchen maid scalded her arms terribly. As surgeons fumbled, Kaelin, almost without thinking, summoned Hannah. She knelt, her voice weaving a soft, complex melody that danced on the air. The angry red wounds faded to smooth skin before the court's astonished eyes. But it was the tear that traced a path down Hannah's cheek at the girl's pain that truly struck the king. It was the first crack in his own armored heart, a silent question echoing within him. What kind of power is this that feels the pain it cures? Hannah, despite her initial fear, began to see glimpses of the man behind the crown. She noticed the way his shoulders tightened at the mention of betrayal, the flicker of something akin to pain in his eyes when a particularly sycophantic noble praised his strength. She saw the intense, lonely focus with which he studied maps of his kingdom, not with greed, but with a weary sense of duty. The ruthless king narrative was beginning to fray at the edges. During a tense walk in the courtyard, she dared to ask about a faded, lonely tapestry depicting a happier court. Kaelin's face darkened, but instead of anger, he offered a shard of truth. A lifetime ago, he said, his voice rough, before trust became a liability. It was not an explanation, but it was an admission. It was the first thread of a connection in their epic love story, a hint that the darkness within him was born of a deep and profound hurt, rather than pure malice. Not everyone at court was captivated by the gifted maiden. Lord Vorlag, the spy master, watched the king's growing fascination with venomous suspicion. He saw Hannah's influence as a direct threat to his own power and to the kingdom's strength. He began a campaign of subtle betrayal, planting seeds of doubt in the ears of other nobles. She bewitches him, he would whisper. Her magic is a veil for her ambition. She lulls us into weakness. The court's atmosphere grew thick with intrigue. Hannah felt the hostile stares, the whispered conversations that ceased when she approached. She was an outsider, a supernatural anomaly in their world of political knives. The fantasy romance was set against a dangerous backdrop of suspicion and looming threat. She realized that her light, which brought hope to the people, was seen as a dangerous flame by those who thrived in the king's darkness, setting the stage for a terrible conflict. The tension culminated at a state banquet. A visiting duke, emboldened by wine and Vorlag's whispers, openly mocked Hannah, calling her a pet witch and questioning the king's judgment for harboring her. The hall fell silent, waiting for an explosion of royal fury. Hannah simply lowered her eyes, prepared to endure the humiliation. But Kaelin did not yell. He stood, and his voice was dangerously quiet, yet it filled every corner of the room. You speak of things you do not understand, he said, his gaze fixed on the duke. The maiden's gift is a national treasure, not a subject for your drunken ridicule. You will apologize, or you will learn the true meaning of my judgment. The defense was swift, absolute, and shocking to all. It was the first public spark of his transformation, a king defending compassion not as a weakness, but as a strength. The strong female lead had inspired a king to protect not just her, but the value she represented. Shaken by his own public defense of her, Kaelin sought Hannah out in the palace gardens that night. The mask of the king was gone, leaving only a weary, conflicted man. Under a canopy of stars, he spoke of his past. He told her of a trusted regent who had murdered his father and poisoned his mother, of a childhood shattered by betrayal that taught him that love was a vulnerability and mercy was a fool's game. His ruthlessness was a fortress he had built to survive. Hannah listened, her heart breaking for the boy he had been. She didn't offer empty platitudes. Instead, she placed a hand over his, where it rested on the cold stone bench. "A fortress has no windows," she said softly. "It protects you from pain, but it also keeps out all the light. You have been a king who rules from a fortress, but you could be a king who rules from a garden." In that moment, the love story deepened from curiosity into profound understanding. The dynamic between them shifted irrevocably. Kaelan no longer summoned Hannah, he requested her presence. He began to ask for her counsel, not on matters of state, but on matters of the heart. He wanted to understand how to redress the grievances of an overtaxed region, not with less force, but with more fairness. He was trying, clumsily, to build a window in his fortress. He accompanied her on a visit to the city's infirmary, a place he had never deigned to enter. He watched, silent and awestruck, as she moved among the sick and dying, her presence bringing not just healing, but immense comfort. The people looked at her with adoration, and for the first time, Kaelan saw that look directed at him not out of fear, but out of a dawning hope. He saw the heartwarming power of true leadership, the ability to inspire and uplift. He wanted to be worthy of that look. However, Kaelan's softening heart was seen as weakness by his enemies. Lord Vorlag, fearing his influence was waning, made his move. He conspired with disgruntled lords from the old regime, men who had profited from the king's fear-based rule. They saw the king's change not as growth, but as a vulnerability to be exploited. Vorlag planned a coup, intending to remove the bewitched king and install a puppet more amenable to their cruel and greedy designs. The plot thickened in the shadows. The adventure turned inward, becoming a deadly game of courtly intrigue. Loyalists brought whispers of the plot to Kaelan, but the web was complex. The kingdom was plunged into a silent war, a drama where friend could not be distinguished from foe. The king's past, the very trauma that forged his ruthlessness, was now being used as a weapon to pull him and his newfound hope back into the shadows forever. The conspirators acted during a private council meeting. A goblet of wine, intended for the king, was laced with a slow-acting, undetectable poison. As Kaelan raised it to his lips, Hannah, seated nearby for the first time, felt a violent, unnatural chill, a supernatural warning through her connection to life forces. Without thinking, she cried out and struck the cup from his hand, the dark wine splashing like blood across the oak table. Chaos erupted. Vorlag immediately accused Hannah of attempting to poison the king herself, a perfect frame-up that would remove them both. Guards seized her. Kaelan stood frozen, his old instincts screaming of betrayal, his newfound trust shattered in an instant. The darkness of his past surged forward, threatening to swallow the light she had kindled. He looked at her, and for a terrifying moment, the ruthless king was back on the throne, his eyes filled with icy betrayal. Thrown into the dungeons, Hannah felt a despair deeper than any fear. He had believed the lie so easily. The fortress walls had slammed shut. Yet, even there, her spirit did not break. She was the strong female lead, and her strength was not in magic, but in resilience. She knew the truth. She would not beg. She would only hope that the man she had seen beneath the crown would find his way back. Alone in his chambers, Kaelan warred with himself. The evidence seemed irrefutable. Yet, the memory of her tear for the scullery maid, her gentle words in the garden, her fearless defense of his people, haunted him. Vorlag's narrative was clean and simple, appealing to his oldest paranoia. But Hannah's was messy, compassionate, and real. It was this heartwarming memory of her true character that ultimately pierced the darkness. With a sudden, chilling clarity, he realized he was playing directly into the conspirators' hands. He had almost destroyed his only true ally. The king moved not with blind rage, but with calculated precision. The full force of his intellect now turned against the true traitors. He set a trap, feigning belief in Vorlag's story while his most loyal guards gathered evidence. In a dramatic confrontation in the throne room, he revealed the truth, exposing Vorlag's network of lies and the conspiracy's vast reach. It was a battle of wits and will, the epic love he felt for Hannah giving him a reason to fight for a truth beyond his own survival. The conspirators were apprehended. As Vorlag was dragged away, he spat his final venom. "You are weak. She has made you a shadow of the king you were." Kaelin looked down at him, and for the first time, there was no anger, only pity. "No," the king replied, his voice firm and clear. "She has helped me become the king I was always meant to be." He had finally chosen the light over the shadow. Kaelin went to the dungeons himself to free Hannah. He found her not broken, but serene, her light undimmed by the darkness that had sought to extinguish it. He did not offer excuses. Instead, he knelt before her, a king brought to his knees not by force, but by remorse and love. "I failed you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I looked into the face of truth and saw a ghost from my past. Can you ever forgive me?" Hannah placed her hand on his cheek, her touch as healing as her voice. "You did not fail," she whispered. "You learned, and you returned." Her forgiveness was absolute. Theirs was a destiny forged in fire and fear, but tempered by compassion and choice. The ruthless king was gone, replaced by a wise and just ruler. And by his side, his equal in every way, ruled the gifted maiden, his queen, his love, and the enduring light of Eldoria. Their fairy tale was not one of ease, but of transformation, a testament to the power of love to challenge even the most hardened of souls. 5 years later, the throne of Eldoria was no longer made of cold, polished obsidian, but of sun-warmed oak and intertwined living willow, grown and shaped by Hannah's gentle magic. On it sat not just a king, but a partnership. King Kaelin's hand, once known only for signing death warrants, now rested gently over Queen Hannah's, their fingers laced together as they listened to the concerns of their people. Where statues of grim warriors once stood, public gardens now bloomed, and the castle's great hall, once a place of trembling silence, now echoed with the vibrant sounds of music and discourse. The kingdom had not forgotten the shadow of the past, but it was now a lesson in the strength found in mercy, not a chain of oppression. Their daughter, a little girl with her father's dark, serious eyes and her mother's radiant smile, played at their feet, weaving crowns of clover and whispering to the butterflies that danced around her fingers. She was the living embodiment of their union, the perfect, heartwarming blend of resilience and compassion, of strength and gentleness. The ruthless king and the gifted maiden were now figures of a fairy tale told to children, a story of how light conquered darkness not by force, but by love. And Eldoria, once a kingdom of fear, now thrived as a testament to their destiny. Did this heartwarming journey of a hardened king and his resilient maiden capture your heart? If you were moved by this fantasy romance of transformation and epic love, then join our community of dreamers and story lovers. Subscribe to our channel for more captivating tales of royalty, magic, and strong female leads who change their worlds. Don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss our next adventure into worlds of historical fiction and supernatural wonder. What kind of tale should we tell next? Let us know in the comments below.